Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ramen Robbie back with another video for you. So, several times throughout the last year, I've been asked to make a video ranking every Browns quarterback since 1999. And since right now I don't really have any other videos planned, I thought, why not do that video right here, right now? So, that's what we're going to do. We're going to rank every Browns quarterback, not in traditional 1 through 25 rankings, but instead I'm going to use a tier list because tier lists seem to be the way to go these days. So, I'm just going to go with that. But without further ado, let's get into it. All right, first up is Ty Detmer. Now, Ty Detmer was the first quarterback that ever started for the Browns when they came back in 1999. He was originally brought in to be Tim Couch's mentor, but that plan quickly went out the window. He was yanked midway through the first game against Pittsburgh, and he would only start one other game. Now, to be fair, he didn't really have much of a shot here, so it's kind of not fair to him. But at the same time, people associate him with that 43 to nothing loss to Pittsburgh on Sunday night, their first game back. So, no questions asked. Ty Detmer's got to be an F tier here by default. Up next, Tim Couch. Now, we already have an interesting one. Tim Couch. Different people are going to have him all over the board. Some people have him as a B. Some people just have him as a flat out F. Now, let's talk about the positives of Tim Couch first. He started all 16 games in 2001, which is a rarity for a Browns quarterback. He led the Browns to the playoffs in 2002. He has 2 walk-off Hail Marys, and I think he might be the only quarterback in NFL history who's ever done that. His record against Pittsburgh was 3-4. Now, at first glance, that doesn't sound that great, but if you're my age, you only know the Browns-Steelers rivalry to be just total domination on the Steelers side. Like, it's just so rare for the Browns to beat the Steelers. So the fact that he was 3-4 and 2 of those wins came at Pittsburgh, which is just like amazing because I became a Browns fan in 2004 and I've still never seen them win in Pittsburgh. So the fact that he was 3-4 and he could have easily been 5-2. Some of those games were very close losses. So that's kind of impressive. So that's all the positives of Tim Couch, but at the same time, we got to run his numbers, and he's 22-37 as a starter, 64 touchdowns to 67 picks, and most people say 2002 is his best season, but his 18 touchdowns, 18 picks that year. It's just so. Man, this is tough. I'm gonna put him at C. I think C is very fair because I could easily put him as an F because a lot of people will consider him just a flat out bust. So I think C is very fair considering he didn't have a lot of things going for him. So anyway, whatever. Moving on, Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson was the 3rd Browns quarterback to start when they came back in 1999. If his name sounds familiar, it's because he's currently the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Doug Peterson he played for the Browns in 2000. He started 8 games, was 1-7 as a starter, 2 touchdowns, 8 picks, completed 55% of his passes. And somewhere on the screen here, I'll show you one of his throws. This was an actual throw by him. Can't make that stuff up. So no questions asked here. Doug Peterson is an F tier. Up next, Spurgeon Wynn. Spurgeon Wynn. He's known mostly for being one of the Brady 6, one of the 6 quarterbacks drafted ahead of Tom Brady. He was a later round draft pick in the 2000 draft for the Browns. I believe he only lasted 1 year, which was 2000. He was 0-1 as a starter, but he appeared in a number of games. 0 touchdowns, 1 pick, 40 completion percentage. Ouch. So on top of the abysmal numbers, as well as being drafted before Tom Brady, no questions asked here. Spurgeon Wynn, F tier. Up next, another interesting one, Kelly Holcomb. Kelly Holcomb. Wow. This is gonna be controversial because him and Tim Couch had a very open quarterback controversy, divided the fan base back in the day. But let's run the numbers. 4-8 as a starter, not great. 26 touchdowns to 21 picks. That's surprisingly better than it's better than I imagined. 62 completion percentage, and he started that playoff game against Pittsburgh in 2002 where he just lit it up. threw for over 400 yards. The Browns absolutely should have won that game. But at the same time, Kelly Holcomb was the ultimate game manager. He couldn't win you games, but at the same time, he wasn't going to lose you games. One reason he was better than Tim Couch was he got rid of the ball a lot quicker, so he took a lot less sacks. You know, I probably should put him as a C because him and Tim Couch were kind of neck and neck. But because of that playoff game, and the Browns should have won, like I said, and who knows what could have happened that year because there were no Patriots in the AFC, so the Browns could have made a run. I'm not saying they would have won, but Kelly Holcomb's B tier. I know, fight in the comments section. Kelly Holcomb is a B tier. By the way, I should explain. I didn't explain this yet. If I put somebody in a B tier, that doesn't mean they're a B tier quarterback in the NFL. I'm doing like what they accomplished for the Browns. So Kelly Holcomb, in my opinion, accomplished enough with the Browns to be a B tier by Browns standards. So just clarifying that. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Moving on. Jeff Garcia, another interesting one. Jeff Garcia. He was the successor to Tim Couch. He came in from San Francisco, was a big free agent signing at the time. The Browns dished out a lot of money. 3-time Pro Bowler. Had a disappointing outing in Cleveland. But at the same time, he played his ass off. And Butch Davis totally misused him. He tried to make him a pocket passer, which was really stupid. You should always cater to your players. He was way more comfortable outside of the pocket. And he did his best to make it work. A lot of people don't remember that. 3-7 as a starter, 10 touchdowns, 9 picks, 57.1 completion percentage. But man, a lot of this isn't on him. So, you know, he had that 99-yard touchdown to Andre Davis. There was a little brief period, 2 or 3 game period, where it looked like he got it going. A lot of people are going to disagree. I'm putting him in the B tier. B tier, because it wasn't his fault and he played his ass off. And I know a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy, but I'm putting him in the B tier. Up next, Luke McCown. Luke McCown was I want to say a 3rd or 4th round draft pick in 2004 out of Louisiana Tech, I think. 0-4 as a starter. 4 touchdowns, 7 picks, completed less than 50% of his passes. I was only 9 years old at the time, and I could tell this guy just was bad at football. When he was playing, it just was the epitome of hopelessness. I knew the Browns had no shot with this guy on the field. So, Luke McCown, F tier. Up next, Trent Dilfer. Trent Dilfer. Now, this guy has really rubbed me the wrong way over the years because he said a lot of anti-Cleveland stuff after he left Cleveland because he thought he was mistreated here. 4-7 as a starter, 11 touchdowns, 12 picks, 59.8 completion percentage. That's damn near 60. He was brought in by the Crennel Savage regime. He was their guy for some reason. I thought they should have kept Jeff Garcia. But man, as much as I don't like how he's trashed Cleveland, and he bitched and moaned when he got benched for Charlie Fry. It's like, dude, be a fucking pro. As much as I don't like a lot of things about him, he kind of did his job. He was just there to be a stopgap. He wasn't awful. So, Trent Dilfer's a C tier. All right, up next, Charlie Fry. Charlie Fry, 3rd round draft pick out of Akron in 2005. The successor to Trent Dilfer, like I said. Was 6-13 as a starter, 14 touchdowns, 23 picks, 54.6 completion percentage. Ouch. Kind of similar to Tim Couch, held onto the ball too long, got sacked a lot. But he did have his moments. There were some moments where Charlie Fry looked kind of promising. But overall, he was a big bust. But since he was only a 3rd round draft pick, and I like the guy to be honest, I'm going to give him a break. He's going to go in the D tier. Charlie Fry is a D tier quarterback. All right, up next is Derrick Anderson. Now, Derrick Anderson is a pretty interesting one because I believe he was an undrafted free agent who was originally picked up by the Ravens, but was later picked up by the Browns because Phil Savage, the Browns GM, had ties to Baltimore. So the Browns picked him up in 2005, I believe, but we wouldn't see him until late 2006. He started a few games at the end of 2006, and he looked okay. There was this game against Kansas City where he had some long run in overtime, and it set up Phil Dawson's game-winning field goal. He looked okay at the end of 2006. It wasn't any indication of what he would do in 2007, but he was okay. Then, of course, in 2007, just took the world by storm. Went 10-5 as a starter. The Browns were 7-1 at home, which I think it has to be still a franchise record. Went to the Pro Bowl. Just had a phenomenal season. What was his? I think he had 29 touchdowns that year. And that's, to me, that's the biggest indictment of Charlie Frye, that Derrick Anderson was able to do all that with the same team. Makes me think if Derrick Anderson was the starter from the start in 2006, the Browns might have had the 10-6 season in 2006. But of course, he had a setback in 2008. He was 3-6 as a starter. But I still say to this day, if Derrick Anderson had more fan support, he could have been better. Now, this is going to be a very similar comparison to Brian Hoyer, who I'm going to talk about later on. But the fans were just were just killing Derrick Anderson in 2008 because they wanted to see Brady Quinn. And I really think that gets to your head, man. So if Derrick Anderson had more fan support, I really think 2008 could have been different. There were a number of reasons why the Browns were bad in 2008, but that was certainly one of them. Then he came in 2009, didn't do anything, but that has a lot to do with Brian Dable and Mangini. Those two don't know offensive. Well, I should take that back. I guess Dable was the Bills' offensive coordinator this past year. But anyway, let's run Derrick Anderson's numbers. 16-18 as a starter, which is pretty good for a Browns quarterback. 46 touchdowns to 45 picks. 51.9 completion percentage, which is abysmal, but again, that number's kind of deflated because of the Dable-Mangini year. You know what? From being an undrafted free agent to winning 10 games in a season and making the Pro Bowl, Derrick Anderson is a B-tier quarterback. B-tier for sure. Up next, Brady Quinn. Brady Quinn is the Browns' first-round draft pick in 2007. He was a 22nd overall pick. He, let's run his numbers really quick. 3-9 as a starter. 10 touchdowns to 9 picks. I'm surprised he has a positive ratio. This guy just, for being a first rounder, he was such a flop. So, like, for being such a flop and being a first rounder, he's got to be F tier. Definitely F tier. He showed a lot of promise. I'll never forget his first start against the Broncos. Looked very promising. But for, like I said, for being a first round draft pick and being such a flop, he's got to be in the F tier. Now, I know some people are going to think they found a discrepancy in my chart. They're going to say, how can you say there's that big of a gap between Derrick Anderson and Brady Quinn? Because what Derrick Anderson accomplished with the Browns dwarfs what Brady Quinn accomplished. Brady Quinn accomplished nothing with the Browns. Derrick Anderson at least made a Pro Bowl, so that's why there's such a big gap there. All right, moving on. Ken Dorsey. Now, Ken Dorsey he played a very similar role that Drew Stanton has played the last couple of years. He was never really meant to play, but he was just there to be a mentor. And unfortunately, Ken Dorsey had to start some games at the end of 2008, and he just looked absolutely awful, had a noodle arm, similar to other quarterbacks I've mentioned on this chart. When he was on the field, you just knew the Browns had no shot to win. So Ken Dorsey, I don't even know what his numbers are. I don't care what his numbers are. Ken Dorsey's an F. Up next, Bruce Gradkowski. I should give some context at least, but I don't want to. Bruce Gradkowski was signed by the Browns like 4 days before the season ended in 2008. He started the season finale at Pittsburgh. One of the most hopeless games I've ever seen. I don't know if the Browns ever crossed Pittsburgh's 50-yard line. They probably did once or twice, but I know for a fact they did not get past the 40. I actually don't know that for a fact, but I'm willing to bet They did not get past the 40-yard line. Just was absolutely atrocious. Bruce Gradkowski gets an F. All right, next, Jake Delhomme. Now, a lot of people don't remember, but when he was brought in, this was like kind of a big deal. Not like a big deal, but it was a pretty decent signing at the time because aside from his fallout in Carolina in 2009, he was a pretty solid quarterback in the NFL. We all remember when he made the Super Bowl in 2003. He had some other deep playoff runs as well. Mike Holmgren brought him in. He was going to be the guy. And this was, like I said, kind of a big deal. Of course, it was anything but that. He got injured his first game, wound up being 2-2 as a starter. I'm surprised it's 500. 2 touchdowns, 7 picks, 62.4 completion percentage. And he was playing hobbled a lot because he came back and played later in the year. And I believe he was playing with a high ankle sprain or something like that. So, man, a lot of people remember him as being an F-tier quarterback. But because his record is 2-2, I got to give him the 500 record. That surprises the hell out of me. Because of that, I'm going to put him in D tier. Now, this is the most generous D tier you'll see, but he's going to be a D tier quarterback. Up next, Seneca Wallace. Seneca Wallace was also brought in by Mike Holmgren because the two worked together in Seattle. Seneca Wallace, if we're going to run his numbers, he was 1-6 as a starter. Bad. 6 touchdowns to 4 picks. Only 57.4 completion percentage. But, now there's only 3 of you watching at most who remember this. But there was this 3-game stretch in 2010 when Seneca Wallace was starting. He played really well at Baltimore. The Browns should have won that game probably. And the Ravens were like Super Bowl caliber team. They beat the Bengals the next week. And then against Atlanta the following week, Seneca Wallace suffered a high ankle sprain similar to Jake Delhomme and would miss the remainder of the season, I believe. But the Browns were on the verge of getting something, on the verge of like building something there. Now, this is like a micro what-if scenario because it's 3 games nobody remembers and it's Seneca Wallace. But because of that little micro what-if, I'm putting him in the C tier. Seneca Wallace is a C-tier quarterback because we'll never know what would have happened. I still think the Browns could have been a decent team. They were kind of building something. I don't know. I'm probably making an ass of myself right now talking up Seneca Wallace, but because of that micro what-if, he's going to be a C-tier quarterback. Up next, Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy was a 3rd-round draft pick in 2010 by Mike Holmgren again. We've reached the Mike Holmgren era, as you can tell. He was 6-15 as a starter, 21 touchdowns to 20 interceptions. I'm surprised it's positive, and I'm surprised he has 20 touchdowns. 59 completion percentage. And he technically lasted 3 seasons with the teams, which for a Browns quarterback, that's like astonishing. So, and of course, we all remember that little 3-game stretch where he was the starter when they beat the Saints, the defending world champions. They blew out the Patriots. And then they should have beat the Jets, who went to the AFC title game that year. But Chancey Stuckey fumbled in overtime. That's another big what-if that nobody talks about. If the Browns would have won that game, could they have made some kind of run that year? Not like winning the Super Bowl, obviously, but like, could they have made a wild card or something? But because of that little 3-game run, and because he had a terrible supporting cast, like his best receiver for a long time was Greg Little, Muhammad Massaquoi, Montario Hardesty was his running back for a while, Chris Obanaya, because in 2011 Peyton Hillis was like sitting out most of the time. So because of all of those things, I'm making Colt McCoy a C-tier quarterback. I know he had a noodle arm. I know he kind of limited the Browns a while. And I know when he played in the West Coast offense, which should have helped him, he didn't really thrive. So, but like I said, that 3-game stretch, and because he's a blue-collar dude, worked his ass off, I'm putting him in the C tier. Up next, Brandon Weeden. Brandon Weeden was the first-round pick in 2012, the most asinine pick of the expansion era. The dude was 28 years old when they selected him. Just such an awful pick. Um, it was probably like the boringest time in Cleveland Browns history, at least for me. Like I remember 2012 was when I checked out the most. I still watched the games, but like I just was so uninterested. Brandon Weeden was 5-15 as a starter. 23 touchdowns to 23 picks. It's actually better than I thought. I feel like I've said that about a lot of quarterbacks, but I'm surprised he threw 23 touchdowns. 55.1 completion percentage. Now, the only reason I'm not going to make him an F tier quarterback is because, believe it or not, his rookie year, he set the Browns franchise record for passing yards by a rookie. He did do that. As much as we dislike Brandon Weeden as a player, you can't take that away from him. So because of that feat, he's going to be a D tier quarterback. That's the only thing keeping him from being an F. Up next, Thad Lewis. Now this one is going to surprise everybody watching because Thad Lewis only started one game for the Browns. It was the 2012 season finale. It was Pat Shurmur's final game as head coach. And the Browns played the Steelers really tough. It was like the culmination of everything Heckert and Holmgren were building. But at the end of the day, the Steelers were just a more talented team and they won. But Thad Lewis wasn't the reason they lost. Like he played fairly decent, if I'm not mistaken. So since I only have one game to go off of, Thad Lewis is a B-tier quarterback. I know you guys think I'm smoking crack, but Thad Lewis is a B-tier quarterback. I'm sure if he would have started more games, he would have dropped a D or something, but based off that one game, he's a B. Don't care what anybody says. Up next, Brian Hoyer, the hometown kid, one of my favorites. Came onto the scene in 2013 when he was brought in by then GM Mike Lombardi. Looked like he was on the verge of something special in 2013, but he tore his ACL because he doesn't know how to slide. Came back in 2014, led the Browns to a 7-4 start, but the fans turned on him. It's like what I was talking about with Derrick Anderson earlier. The fans were just clamoring for Johnny Manziel. It was so unfair, and it affected Brian Hoyer's play. He suffered as a result, you could tell. But running his numbers, 10-6 as a starter. That is amazing. By far the best of any quarterback since '99. Not counting Baker Mayfield. 17 touchdowns, 16 picks. That's positive. 57.3 completion percentage. Now, I know there's a lot of Brian Hoyer haters out there, but because of that 7-4 start in 2014, because his record is 10-6, he's a B-tier quarterback. Brian Hoyer is certainly a B-tier quarterback. Up next, Jason Campbell. This is a weird one because his record as a starter was 1-7, but I remember him being a lot better than that. 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 56.8 completion percentage. But like I said, I remember him being a lot better because I remember his first start was at Kansas City and he played fairly well, I think. Next week, he beat Baltimore, had a setback against Cincinnati, got injured against Pittsburgh, and then should have beat New England. That was the infamous game the Browns choked away, but they lost that game at the end of the day. Had he held on to that New England game, I would make Jason Campbell a B-tier quarterback, but because they lost and because his record is 1-7, Jason Campbell is a C quarterback. Where are we at here? Johnny Manziel, what a circus. Johnny Manziel was, of course, the second first-round pick in the 2014 draft. Just was an absolute embarrassment off the field. On the field, people forget he wasn't that bad in 2015. He looked like a professional quarterback. And I still say, had that Billy Manziel thing not happened, I think he would still be in the league today. I think that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, that was just so disrespectful and so absurd. I think that's what did it. But anyway, with the Browns, 2-6 as a starter, 7 touchdowns to 7 picks. I'm surprised it's an even ratio. 57 completion percentage. But because he was such a joke off the field and he set the franchise back, He's got to be F tier. Now, as a player, I don't think he's an F player. I've always used the comparison. If you know my channel, you've heard me say this before. I really think he could have been a Jeff Garcia had he really applied himself. But anyway, Johnny Manziel is definitely in the F tier. Up next, Connor Shaw. Connor Shaw started one game at the end of 2014 at Baltimore. I thought, like, when I went off my memory, I thought he played fairly well in that game, but I looked up his numbers and he was pretty average. But at the end of the day, he wasn't the reason they lost that game. The Browns controlled that game for 3 quarters, but let it slip away at the end. So because I only have one game to go off of, Connor Shaw is a C quarterback. Next, Josh McCown. Josh McCown. 1-10 as a starter, but 18 touchdowns to 10 picks, 59.1 completion percentage, and he is the only Browns quarterback to have 3 straight 300-yard passing games. So if his record was better than 1-10, if it was just like 4-7 or something, I would make him a B tier quarterback because he owns that franchise record. Like, think about that. Not even Bernie Kosar or Brian Sipe has done that. So if his record was a little better, I'd make him a B tier, but because he's 1-10, Josh McCown's a C tier quarterback. All right, flipping the page here. Up next is Austin Davis. Austin Davis is an F. I don't care what his numbers are. That guy is definitely an F. He came in at the end of the Mike Pettin regime, like when Mike Pettin's time was winding down in his second year. Austin Davis came in and started a few games, but it's similar to Luke McCown, similar to Ken Dorsey. They just had no shot with this guy on the field. Don't care what his numbers say. Austin Davis is an F tier quarterback. Next is RG3. RG3 was Hugh Jackson's guy. He went 1-4 as a starter, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I'm surprised he only threw 3 interceptions. 59.2 completion percentage. If you remember, he got hurt his first game of the year at Philadelphia, and then he came in towards the end of the year. The only reason I don't make him an F-tier quarterback is because he was the quarterback for their only win in 2016, and I was there, and that was a very special moment. So because of that, I'll give him a D. RG3 is a D-tier quarterback. And like I said, only turned the ball over 3 times, which is really surprising. So next we have Cody Kessler. Cody, you got to trust me on this one. Kessler was 0-8 as a starter, which is just pitiful. But I still think he's way better than 0-8. I remember him being better than 0-8. 6 touchdowns, 3 picks, 56.7 completion percentage. But the guy took care of the football. Like, he wasn't the reason they were losing those games. Those teams were just very undermanned. Now, he had a notoriously weak arm. I'll never forget El Presador, if you're watching this. You uploaded a video of him throwing a button hook and you just roasted him. That's one of the funniest videos I've ever seen to this day. He just had a noodle arm, but I did like the guy. But since his record's 0-8, he's got to be a D-tier quarterback. I got to be objective here. Kessler is a D-tier quarterback. Up next, Deshaun Kaiser. Oh boy. The face of the 0-16 Browns in 2017. You know, I always felt bad for him. He seemed like a nice guy. He had everything going against him. Like Hugh Jackson wasn't helping him out, throwing the ball 40 times a game, whatever it was. He had a pretty bad supporting cast. But at the same time, he just made way too many boneheaded decisions. And like I said, at the end of the day, he was the face of the 0-16 team. So Deshaun Kaiser has got to be an F quarterback. But one positive thing I will say is he was pretty sturdy. He started 15 games, which is pretty hard for a Browns quarterback to do, at least since 99. So that's one positive I'll say. He was pretty sturdy. Up next, Kevin Hogan. Kevin fucking Hogan. Started one game and it was just an absolute disaster. It was at Houston in 2017. That was his chance to really show what he was made of, and he dropped the ball. Kevin Hogan gets an F. But it's kind of weird. In 2016, he had a 100-yard rushing game against the Bengals. Look it up. That's just weird. That's all I'll say. Getting close to the end here. Tyrod Taylor. Now, just like Jake Delhomme, who I was talking about earlier, this was a pretty big deal when the Browns got him because he had made, not a big deal, but it was a pretty good signing. Like, Tyrod Taylor made the playoffs with Buffalo the year before. He was a professional quarterback, which we hadn't seen in 2017 and 2016. So it was like refreshing to see a professional quarterback in Cleveland. Unfortunately, like a lot of quarterbacks since '99, he would get hurt pretty early in his tenure. He was only 1-1 as a starter. And to his credit, he didn't at least publicly he didn't pout when he was benched. So man, I don't know where to go here. Do I go D or C? I can't go C. He didn't do enough. So I got to go D here. But, had he started the whole season, I think he would have been probably a C, maybe even a B quarterback. But since we don't really have anything to go off of, make him a D. And last but not least, Baker Mayfield. First overall pick in the 2018 draft. Should have won the Rookie of the Year award in 2018, but was robbed for political reasons. The writers didn't like him because of the Hugh Jackson drama and stuff like that. They thought they were teaching him a lesson by not giving him the Rookie of the Year. But, the dude set the NFL record for passing touchdowns in a season. People forget about that. Like, that's why when everyone was trashing him last year, I just wasn't buying into all the negativity. I was like, dude, he's having a bad year. Sophomore slump. And even in the sophomore slump, he still threw, I think, 22 touchdowns, had more touchdowns than picks. When with all the off-the-field drama, it's just, I never gave up on him. So the only reason I don't make him an S tier is because I got to be objective. He had a big setback last year, but Baker Mayfield is definitely an A tier quarterback. And by the way, Baker, if you're watching this, I apologize for that cringy DM I sent you a few weeks ago about the video game NFL 2K5. I had a few too many drinks that night. I honestly don't remember sending that, so let's just forget about it. But anyway, that's going to do it for this tier list. That is all 30 quarterbacks who have started for the Browns since 1999, ranked in no particular order, but just, doing a tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If this does well, if this gets more than like 10,000 views, I'll probably start doing more of these for different things involving the Browns, maybe even some other teams. So I'll just have to wait and see on the feedback for that. But anyway, guys, with all that said, make sure you subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. Follow me on Twitter. Please consider supporting me on Patreon. Follow my other YouTube channel. All the links will be in the description. But anyway, with all that said, I'm Ramen Robbie, and thanks for watching.